Hello and welcome to this week's Old School RuneScape Q&A. I'm your host Mod Sween and I am delighted to be joined by Mod Arcane.
Hi.
Mod Kieran.
Hello, hello.
And Mod Mac.
Hello.
Behind the scenes we have got Mod Spear running things and we've got Mod Tide on the chat. So at JagXTide should you have any questions and he'll get them to us. Firstly, let me apologise for holding you up. We started 15 minutes late. Me and Kieran are in a meeting. It's a good meeting, so there's that. It's that we have like a fortnightly call where it's some members of the old school leadership team talking to people like the CEO and the VP, where we say, hey, this is all the cool stuff we're doing, this is what we've got planned, and they give us feedback on that. I knew it'd overrun, Kieran. It was booked in for 90 minutes, then it got shortened to 60 minutes, and I was like, no way is this going to be an hour long. Anywho.
No, but anyway, it was good because I'm all really excited about everything we're doing. So, that's awesome.
Cool. Announcements. Let's begin with those as usual. So, last week we announced Mahogany Homes, and we started polling it on Monday. The poll is still live. ! Construction to learn a bit more about it. So, I guess a TLDR. It's an alternative, a more interactive way to train a construction skill. It was player suggested. You know what? I saw a lot of players suggesting it, but we're crediting Ben OS the Great, so great work there, ideating it. The way it works is you're assigned a construction job from an NPC called Amy. Your assistance is required to help repair some Gillenorian homes in exchange for some carpentry points and some construction XP. Read the blog to learn more, and then head to a poll booth to vote. I've got to say, actually, before I went on holiday, the update was like codename construction update. It didn't have the name Mahogany Homes. So I was on holiday when I first saw it. And it sounds like an old person, like an old folks home. That was my first thought. Like Mahogany Homes, assisted care facility. Like leave your old people here and then forget about them. Come back in a month's time. But don't stop you voting for it because of that, now that I've pointed it out. Okay, next announcement. Something we published about an hour and a half ago. A Porcine of Interest is a new novice quest designed to onboard new players, new members into the Slayer skill. ! Porcine, P-O-R-C-I-N-E, to learn a bit more about that content. And we've got some questions we'll answer shortly as well. Lastly, of the announcements, ! Questions. We do these live streams every week. Most of it is spent answering the questions you have. So we thought we'd worked to put together a better, handy form for you to submit your questions. So get those in and then we'll ask them next week. Okay, how is everybody? Let's start there. So I'll work our way to my stream right. So we'll begin with Mod Arcane. How's it going?
Pretty good, yeah. I've not been on the stream for a couple of weeks, but I'm glad to be back. As always, I've been playing a lot of RuneScape and I've been doing a lot of work. It's basically my life as of the past couple of months. Pretty good.
Mod Kieran?
I'm all right. Too hot, just before I beat everyone at the post on that one. Because, holy crap, it is too hot. Look at this, 32.5 degrees in my room. It is hard. It is hard to focus. And you know what? I'll be kind. I'll convert that to freedom units for all the American viewers as well. 90.5 freedom units in my room right now. And everyone's having the same experience. So it's not super pleasant to work in, but beyond that, everything's good. Enjoying life right now.
Mod Mac, how's it going with you?
I'm doing good, yeah. +1's the hot thing. I live out in the country, so the house just keeps filling up with flies. I bought one of these fly racket things. I'll get rid of them. Yeah, just really annoying. But I'm good.
To all the people in the chat going, AC, we just don't have it in the UK. You can buy like portable units and stick a pipe out the window, and that's about it. You're pretty limited. We just don't build AC into the homes here like pretty much everywhere else does. It is pretty rubbish. And so, as Max said, when you open your windows to try and get some level of draft, you get the world's army of moths and flies coming in. So, yeah, tough times in the UK.
I think we should just accept that the UK is a backwards place. We other countries do it better, but we don't learn from them. I know I've heard the rumor that it's because UK houses are built to retain heat. That's not true. Somebody did a study where we have like the worst heat retention in Western Europe. And that's why it's so hot as well, because we're not retaining the cold heat they're generating. Anyway, let's go through what everyone's been up to for the past week, or since the last stream. What have we been working on? What have we been doing in our spare time? Well, Arcane, you mentioned you've been playing RuneScape.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working mainly on some prototypes for Mahogany Homes and just like getting that up to scratch. Assuming everything passes, that'll be good to go fairly soon. And in my spare time, I've been doing a lot of skilling. So I'm generally quite a big PVMer, but I've been taking a bit of a step back. I'm an Iron Man, so my supplies are running low. You know, gotta catch up again. We're getting a bunch of blood shards that I posted on Twitter. Been pretty lucky there. It's good fun.
What, Kieran? What have you been up to?
Been spending a lot of time thinking about the fishing skill boss. Been working with the team to work out kinks in its design, smooth it all out. As obviously we haven't blogged that yet, so we're still working out all the details ready so that we can blog it in the near future. I don't know if we have an exact time frame on it yet. So
we had a date in mind. Ultimately, we felt it was too soon to do it justice, so we're going to wait a bit longer so we can talk a bit more about the design. I think, had we gone ahead, initially we were looking at next week, right? That's too soon. We wouldn't have all the information we need to give the community, so they can have a good informed vote. We wouldn't be able to show off some of the work in progress, concept art stuff. So soon is the best answer we've got. We've got a date in mind, but nothing concrete just yet. ModMac, what have you been working on lately?
I've been working on the Porcine quest we've just announced. It's coming along quite nicely. Just sort of polishing that now. It's in the sort of final stages. Home-wise, I've spent the last week getting my graceful set on my Iron Man. So I'm pretty pleased with that.
Sweet. All right. Can somebody tell me what is the correct way of saying porcine or porcine? Because we've said both on the stream so far.
So I'd like to jump in here and just, I think it should be pronounced porcine because it makes the pun work slightly better. But I mean, pronounce it however you like. Porcine just sounds better, I think.
Okay. We could say porky. It'd be like shortening our wing. Ardy.
What we need, Sween, is another episode of J-Mod's Pronounce. That's what I'm
I'm up for that, you know. Mod Spear. We'll come to you after the stream with a request for putting together a special little J-Mod's Pronounce. Maybe we'll make it live to make it even more embarrassing. All right, let's get straight into the questions, shall we? So we've got some more about Mahogany Homes, given that the poll went live on Monday. So Mod Arcane, I'm looking at you to give me some of the answers. Everyone else, feel free to chime in if you'd like to. So Retribute asks, could we allow Mahogany Homes to help revitalise Burgh de Rott? You know that?
Yeah, so it's a suggestion, as well as a couple of other areas, mainly focusing on other areas that are quite like rundown in Gilnor. And I kind of like the idea. I'm not sure if it strictly fit into Mahogany Homes, like if you go into Burgh de Rott and just trying to fix up buildings, but maybe like it could be a quest itself to actually like revitalize the entire area. I think that could do some love. Not sure if the people there would really be able to afford to have people to come and fix their apartments and make them nicer here and there. They're kind of past the point of like nice homes. It's kind of just a mess there, right? They need a lot more than just one dude coming in and giving them a nice new dresser. But yeah, I like the idea of having other expansions to Mahogany Homes in the future, and this could be potential, right?
Well, you know what? Maybe they can't afford it, but maybe a nice king somewhere, like Roald, maybe there's a stimulus package where he will pay you to go and spruce up the area.
Exactly. I think there needs to be a bit more lore behind it than just Amy or one of the contractors giving you an assignment there.
Okay, well, so I guess we'll leave it as, yeah, we'd like to do more to maybe help revitalise this in future, but probably not associated to Mahogany Homes. Okay, next question. Wizzy Hat G asks, will the plank sack apply to Ultimate Iron Man?
The question is, we don't know yet. It's been a question, it's been added to the poll. We've noticed people are quite worried about it, potentially as a meta-changing thing for Ultimate Iron Man, but some of the Ultimate Iron Man are obviously willing to play the game mode as the game changes, right? Like, they just go along with it. So we polled it separately, so depending on how UIMs vote for that question will determine if they were able to use or buy the plank sack at all.
Okay, so the answer is wait and see.
When does the poll close?
Next Monday.
Tuesday. Monday, okay. I'll say in the poll itself. Okay, next question. Aizen Tank asks, is there going to be a step added to Master Clue scrolls alongside Mahogany Homes?
There isn't one planned, but it would maybe make sense to have one with the entire Carpenter outfit, since we've got quite a few clues that require entire outfits. So maybe in the future, but not currently planned now.
Cool. Okay, next question is from Shay5500 PvP, and they ask, can we add more wall kit rewards?
I think people generally like wall kits. Like we've got a very limited amount of them right now, especially when we had the Twisted one from Twisted League. That was really well received, and I've got a lot of friends who have bought and used that. It does look really good. We do have one wall kit reward from Mahogany Homes, and it would be fitting to have multiple. Especially Prif has been requested quite a few times, a Prifdinus wall kit. That'd be really, really cool. Currently for this release, we're only plotting for one, but I'd definitely like to see more in the future. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm personally really in favour of looking at wall kits as viable rewards. I know they're really highly sought after, and a lot of players feel like we've kind of held them hostage behind partnerships, which wasn't the intention, but I can definitely see why players feel that way. It's just that, for what it is, it takes quite a lot of art time to get done. But if we know it's one of the rewards you really like, then we can prioritise it accordingly. So I'm glad we're starting to roll some more out. Okay, so 2 more questions about Mahogany Homes. Since Because Pickles asks, can you give some examples of how the jobs will look? I'm hoping it's a bit more involved than build an oak larder in this guy's house.
Yeah, so when it comes down to it, effectively you are going to be going to someone and building certain pieces of furniture in their house and repairing other pieces of furniture. So if you really want to break it down to simplest elements, it's going to be the same as construction, right? You remove and build stuff and maybe you repair stuff. But in terms of how it actually plays out, you'll go to Amir, one of the contractors, maybe use NPC contacts. You'll get an assignment which will be randomly generated across all of Gilnor in the various cities that we've described. You'll get assigned to a specific house, and then you'll go to the house, talk to the NPC, figure out kind of what they want, what they're looking for, what they kind of want done for them to be happy with their house. And then after you've gone through the entire house and done everything that they've required, then you'll get your rewards to then carry on. It will feel a lot more varied than current construction, especially a lot less RSI inducing. So it should definitely feel a lot more engaging and a bit more rewarding. A bit more gamified as well, since you'll have like your construction count going up every single time, you'll be getting points. You'll feel like you're consistently getting some sort of gratification, even if it's only very little, compared to the current, which is just a massive drain on your bank. So
and
it
your
should
wrist won't hurt.
Yeah, and your wrist won't hurt. Very important. Preserve your wrist. I've been suffering a lot from that recently. It's not fun.
Okay, sweet. Right, I've got one more question about this type of this piece of content. So Garwold asks, what are your thoughts on adding Redwood planks with this update, and then presumably Redwood furniture too?
Yeah, this was brought up quite a lot during the early concepts of Mahogany Homes. It is something we want to do, just implementing Redwood in some way, shape, or form, and it does kind of make sense to add a bit more to construction, although there's other skills that could use Redwoods as well. Player construction is one of the most obvious ones, but it's also one of the ones that requires the most work in terms of furniture. Like, you'd have to have a Redwood thing for almost every single type of furniture, and then you gotta like make sure it's not to a meta breaking, so maybe they all require secondary or tertiary ingredients, and they're not training methods. And then if they're gonna be not training methods, then you probably want them to look pretty good, so then there's actually a point to adding them then, right? Like, they visually look nice for your house. And then you're just ramping up the art time significantly then, right? So we want to add them, definitely. They don't really have much of a use right now. It's like birdhouses and a bit of fletching. That's like about it. But currently for this update, it's not being added, since we do think it requires a significant amount of time to add them properly.
Okay, I think the key thing to reiterate is that we're quite conscious that lots and lots of people have lots and lots of logs. I mean, so it's quite difficult to introduce these types of items. I remember when we introduced, and this was maybe 2 years ago, so Kieran, it would just been you and the team at this time, when Mod West pitched the the leather shields. And we were looking at the Redwood shields, and to us it made sense that those shields should have like a high out value. But in the end, we just had to nerf it to the ground because all of a sudden Redwood logs will be able to be outed for crazy amounts of GP. And it's the same reason why I think we're quite hesitant to introduce new uses for it. I'm not sure what the best way to go about it is, but we'll keep it in mind for sure.
Luckily, I do think planks in general would be okay because a lot of the planks' cost and value comes from the spend at the sawmill or on the spell from the Lunar Spellbook. So logs are generally quite cheap anyway, right? You don't spend a ton on mahogany logs for a mahogany plank. It comes from the cost you spend at the sawmill operator. So I think planks would actually be able to make work fairly well.
Okay, great. Right, that wraps up the Mahogany Homes questions we've got. So we'll leave it with the poll is currently live, so head to a poll booth in game or access your account management menu to be able to vote. Poll ends next Monday, so make sure you have your say before then. Okay, next up, we've got some questions around the porcine or porcine, whatever floats your boat, of interest. So this is the piece of content we announced earlier today, !PORCINE, to learn a bit more about it. Essentially, it's a new novice level quest aimed to introduce new low-level members to the Slayer skill. Right, so I've got some questions. Mod Kieran, you're first up, and then I'll go to Mod Mac for the rest. So we pulled Boss Slayer because we didn't want new Slayer content following player feedback. Why are we then announcing this quest, which is essentially a Slayer quest?
Whilst it links to Slayer, I don't see this particularly as a Slayer update. Its goals are completely separate. The goals of this are to help surface the best content we have in game, be it this or be it other skills we're looking to improve, like construction and whatnot. But it's about getting new players to help understand the content in game. That's directly what it's trying to do. So players who have never interacted with the Slayer skill yet, or are very early on, now have a quest which will help to introduce them to the concepts Slayer uses and help to lead them into getting their first task and into the system. That is something I think we could do better across other skills and other areas of the game as well. I think we take for granted our knowledge, knowledge that we already have from playing the game for the last 10 years, last 15 years even, and the reliance on the wiki for things, especially for Slayer, and early game Slayer is pretty rubbish as well. So I really hope this will help teach people and bring them into it. I hope it doesn't really have the impact on the Slayer skill itself that players obviously feel it's not really need for new Slayer content. So the new Slayer monster obviously coming with this, but lower level and just wraps up that quest in a neat bow. So that's how I describe it. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Sure, I'll jump in. I see it as so I've seen some suggestions for incorporating them into adventure paths. So I've got two pieces of feedback on that suggestion. Firstly, I think it's great that you're looking at adventure paths and thinking that could be a viable way to introduce new content. Secondly, I think adventure paths are awesome for the super early game stuff, like go and kill 5 things, go and kill 10 things, just to introduce you to the core mechanics. Whereas introducing to a new skill entirely, I think it warrants the gamification of a quest. I think a good comparison would be something like Druidic Ritual, introducing you to herb lore, that kind of scale. And it's entirely possible that if it's successful, we could then add other quests to support other skills, kind of help in that onboarding aspect. And what we said in the blog, and it reigns true, so I'll repeat it here, is that when it comes to retaining new players, and we do get new players, and we've got data on retention and what they're doing and so on, we don't want to make content easy. We don't want to streamline it massively amounts. We just want to make them aware that content exists. Like Old School is a huge game with lots and lots of content. We just want to kind of say, hey, you can go and do this here. And that's what this kind of quest is for.
Just to comment a few more things on Slayer itself, I think, this quest isn't directly solving all these problems, but I've spent some time looking at the Slayer skill, and some of it really doesn't make that much sense on the lower end. Like, your first master is all the way in Burgh, which is fair enough, that's fine. The second master is all the way in Mauritania, locked behind Priest in Peril. But the third master's nice and accessible, stood in Edgeville, which is really like you can get to really easily as a new player, and it's like it seems a little backwards. And then you know these early masters have some awful tasks on them. I think that could be something that could be addressed in of itself as well. Like, who wants to be assigned 100 green dragons when you're doing Vanica? It doesn't make much sense. Now those are bigger tasks. Those are bigger problems to then think about solving another time. But what I'm saying is broadly, like, things like a quest can really help to just bridge the gap. It's not going to solve everything, but players need to discover the content in the game and not be lost completely. You need to give them the right advice, help them on their way to find and discover the content that we know the game is so great for. The reason we've done a lot of slave updates in the past is partially because we know it's a skill that's loved by everybody, right? So let's get it into the hands of more people.
Okay, let's go on to some questions about the actual content itself. So, ModMac, I'll be coming to you for a few of these answers. So what was the inspiration for creating this particular quest?
So I knew roughly where I wanted to situate the quest. And I was kind of like, I had the idea, the basic idea of the quest is that there's a monster and that you need to kill it, right? That's like the foundation. And I was kind of just looking around the area for what this monster could be. And they were pigs. And I kind of rolled with that. Can't really give too much away, but yeah, that's kind of where it stems from.
Okay, sweet. How long do you envisage the quest being?
It depends very much on player level and their experience. A high level player would probably blast through it in 5-10 minutes. And it depends as well if you want to read the dialogue, if you want to read the lore. It's up to you. Low level players, 20 minutes maybe. Depends on how much they struggle with the monster.
Okay, cool. How hard? So you mentioned they might struggle with the monster. How hard do you think it would be to defeat the beast?
If they don't use the equipment we give them, very hard. Although it's a low level monster, it's designed to be killable. I'd probably compare it maybe with a slightly easier Aldraenor from Vampire Slayer. That's probably where I'd put it. So not impossible, but yeah, if you're low level, you're going to need to watch out, I think.
Okay, lastly, I've seen lots of excitement about the Fashionscape possibilities for them. Why did we choose to add the goggles, and why were we choosing to add them to the Slayer helm?
So historically, I've kind of always noticed that the Slayer helm, it covers everything except the eyes. Like, you've got the face mask, you've got the nose peg, earmuffs, but the eyes are kind of just left exposed. And it's supposed to be this all-encompassing ultimate Slayer equipment, right? And also, some of the modified Slayer helms already have goggles built in, which felt kind of weird. So yeah, adding goggles just felt like a natural thing to do. And it also gelled quite nicely with the new monster, so...
Okay, awesome. Right, that wraps up the questions I've got. I mean, we only published the blog 2 hours ago or so, so I'm sure we'll be engaging with questions and feedback and perhaps making changes to the blog in the coming days. So !PORCINE to learn a bit more about the quest and the content. Right, let's take some questions from the chat, so bear with me. At JagXTide, should you have any questions? And I'm just going to scroll down this sheet and see what he's got for us. Okay, now this is a free-for-all, so if you want to answer. King Adam Mate asks, can the Twisted Horns be changed so that on a PvP death, the PK gets the horns and the mask, instead of the expensive horns being lost and the PK only getting the mask?
That seems pretty darn reasonable. I think that's the standard behaviour we generally expect, right? That the tradable parts drop to the PK and the rest of it wouldn't, because it's untradeable.
Okay, I think I saw him ask the same question in our old school Slack channel as well. So after the stream, we'll take a look there. Seems like a reasonable suggestion, but we'll see if anybody else has raised any concerns or support for it. Oh wait, no. So Modtide has left a message actually. He said, if this change was to be done, maybe we'd only do it for placeholder of items and not the bank fillers. No, I'm reading the wrong one. Don't ignore me. So I deleted the question. I'm having a mare today. Apologies, everybody. I am really hot. The fan behind me is not doing a job, and I'm well aware that my face is very shiny. Okay. Next question is from Green Molly RS. So this is what Modside's note was pertaining to. Can we maybe get a warning when removing placeholders in bank? Sometimes I misclick it and it's super annoying. So I'll read the note from Modside. He said, if it's to be done, maybe you only do it for placeholder items and not the bank fillers. Also, maybe want this as a toggle.
I think it'd be really nice to have. I've ruined my bank multiple times with doing that.
Sweet, okay, we'll move on then. Pilsen asks, could we get herbivore recolors so it looks more like the one you're catching?
I need to look at a picture now.
Yeah, I didn't realize it looked different.
Oh yeah, it's got like brown leaves rather than like the green ones on the one you catch.
I don't think that'd be a tough thing to do. From Dev Point, I think that'd be worth polling. Yeah.
It'd be nice.
So there's a metamorphosis option. I don't see a big deal with it really.
Okay, sweet. So I'll move on to the next question. Kieran, I'll probably come to you for this one. Since you've spoken a bit about the HiScores in the past, BA Addict asks, can we have Barbarian Assault gambles listed on the HiScores?
Does anybody in this room know if we track it yet? Track it at all? How many you've done? I don't think we do. So if we don't track it already, it would be starting from 1, like we used to every time we had a tracker. It is tracked, according to the chat. So no, that's good. It's tracked in the log. Wonderful. So yes, we would be able to do it technically. There's no real problem with being able to just add it to the HiScores. The problem with the HiScores is adding more load to it. And it's actually more of a problem when you add things that already have a large number of people with ranks. And that's actually ends up being more work for the module. And honestly, I don't really want to go there with putting more things on the HiScores until we're in a position where we've been able to address the problems they're facing, which we've not been able to prioritize the last couple of months. So,
but that work was on the PowerPoint that we were going through in the meeting just before we jumped in here. So it is something we're well aware of and we want to be prioritizing, and we presented that to our exec team. They're on board as well. So perhaps when we get to that level of stronger infrastructure, and we can start looking at customization of it all. Okay, I'm going to continue taking some more questions from the chat. So Dukes RS asks, could the Blade of Saeldor get a unique animation just like the Rapier and the Mace did?
I'd really like that. It feels slightly underwhelming. Like there's such a hard to get item is a bit feels like a wet noodle.
Okay, I'll make a note down and we can discuss with the art team. All right, a few more questions from the chat before we go back to the sheet. So I know a lot of you have asked questions over the past few weeks which I haven't quite gotten to. What we've done is we've kept them, so we'll get through them occasionally. It seems like there are more of you asking questions than we have time for, which means there might be a little backlog, but we'll get there. Okay, so EKHO asks, can we reduce the teleports on the achievement cape to around 50? It's having side effects on things like Abyss runecrafting.
I'm not sure. I mean, if people think it's a genuine problem, I don't see why we couldn't scale it back. Like, we're not opposed to doing that at all. How much of an issue it is. Like, I'm not sure if other people would go through 50 of the other teleports, like, normally, maybe.
Yeah, I get that people are...
We could remove it as well, right? If it's just that teleport.
I get that people are worried about like a buff to runecrafting, but I don't think Abyss is something we should be afraid of even buffing slightly in this manner, especially in a way that you need the achievement diary cape before you can even do it. I think that's perfectly reasonable as a buff to it. So
Well, I know it was being discussed internally even before we got to the Q&A, so we'll keep an eye on it. Okay, next question. OS Scruffkin asks, when are we getting Frank as an unlockable pet? Frank being the blood guard.
Would it come from Bloodveld?
Maybe killing Frank, and then you adopt Frank's child.
No. Sad.
I mean, on that, Bloodveld is Frank, wonderful, but Slayer pet in general. I mean, we have Slayer bosses that have pets, and I don't want to go down this route of just adding more and more pets for no reason. But Slayer is one of those skills that is not buyable, and could feasibly have a pet that could drop on any task with metamorphosis options for different Slayer creatures. So there's an opportunity there if people wanted it. That's it, really.
Right, okay. So let's go to the questions we've collected over the past few weeks. But before we do, I just want to shout out some awesome community art. Mod Spear, would you be able to throw some up on the screen for us? I want to go first. Okay, this is awesome. This is from a player named Kate Collects. Imagine if you had this. Think back to when you're a child, you're in the back of the car, you're playing Gameboy, you're on a long trip. What do you play? If only you could play RuneScape. This is an awesome piece of work, and I hope to see more from her as well. I know we've shouted out quite a lot. It is sick.
You could feasibly imagine this actually being the game.
You know what someone mentioned as well, and we were looking way back for Old School Mobile's release, if we could mock up some kind of small arcade games. Maybe to go on you can play games on Messenger, that type of thing. Realistically, this is a type of thing that could work really well.
Is that a woodcutting animation? what is this animation?
Looks like press ups.
Cinderbox.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool.
Wow, they updated OSRS graphics.
Love it. Awesome. It's a great job, Kate, there. At Kate Collects, if you want to follow. Thank you very much, Mod Spear. Do you want to show us the next piece we got? This is from our very own Mod Cookie. So this is, you know what? Let's see if we can throw some shout out in the chat. Mod Side, could you grab Mod Cookie's Twitter and put it in the chat? He deserves a follow. He is the most memey J-Mod we've got in the studio. And you know what? He's got the talent to back it up. I know Mod Kieran, I think you worked on a Fallguy.
Oh yeah, mine honestly, no disrespect to Mod Cookie, but I think mine's on another level.
Yeah.
Okay, then Legend Arts took a swing at this, and let's see what Legend Arts came up with.
Cute.
It's beautiful.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
With thick arms. Beef.
Some people are saying that's worse. You know what? It's less blocky, but I love it. It's a proper old school beam. Cool. Thank you very much, Mod Spear, and Mod Tide as well. I saw you in the chat shouting out Mod Cookie. Okay, lots of questions to go through. Let's begin. Lots of people have been asking, is there an update on the account services, the game moderation issue? It was quite prevalent a few weeks ago. It still is prevalent. I put out a holding statement. So in terms of an update for you, the honest answer is we're still investigating. And let's talk about what the investigation entails. The main thing is we want to ensure that if there's any change to the game rules or the way we enforce the rules, then that's accompanied by as much action as possible, and you know what that action is going to be. So what we're doing at the moment is working with our legal team to kind of look at the viability of, can we take down these types of websites? In the last few months we've been taking down gold selling websites. Can we expand that to other things as well? We're also looking at leveraging our relationship with the likes of Discord and YouTube to see how likely it is we can quickly move to close down certain servers or remove content. So that's what we're up to in the background. We will update you as soon as we can. I know there's a kind of a reputation, or at least a perception, that we put out a holding statement and then we wait until it blows up again. Not what we're trying to do. We're having these conversations internally and then with our partners as well. Okay, now move on to the questions about the game updates. So earlier today, we released a game update, which is 1 day ahead of schedule. Would anybody on the panel like to run through what we released? Any volunteers?
Is anyone in the team that handles this feature release?
Okay, in that case, I will do it. I don't agree. So, Poll 72 ended last week, and this week's update is mainly focused around introducing some of the quicker wins we could do from that. So this week's game update brought with it some darker graceful. I know we pushed back for quite a while saying lots of people play on dark brightness settings, so that's why we were a bit reticent to making the graceful darker. But we folded, and now graceful is darker. Similarly, keeping on the chromatic theme, we've changed the color of the Saradome in Halo. It's way more blue nowadays. Kind of matches the God Cape a little bit more. This is because with the advent of the Seren Halo, the Seren Halo and the Saradome Halo look very, very similar. We've replaced a few options on things like the gem bags to make it a bit more easy to use. And there's some changes to snake grass and some herbs. Let me quickly run through those. So if you were to compost snake grass now, you will get super compost instead of the regular compost. I know it sounds like a small change, but if you look at the skill guide, I think in terms of levels, snake grass is way higher than any of the other ones, so it makes more sense that it should be super compost rather than regular. Now the other change with compost is that we noticed certain herbs when clean will decompose into super compost, but if you leave them grimy and you don't clean them, they'll just be regular compost. So we fixed that, and now you'll get super compost regardless of the state of the herb. That's largely it. There's a few other like typo fixes and a few other bug fixes. We were pleased to know that the chair in Prif has been removed, so now you can actually get to the range and use it to cook. Happy days. Now those are some of the first releases from Poll 72. There'll be more in the coming weeks, and lots of people are asking about things like the blood, the Blisterwood Tree XP, and the Blood Shard as well. We're working on those. And just to make you aware of another change which is related to game updates, we have announced some scheduling changes. So, beginning today, game updates will happen on Wednesdays rather than Thursday. This is because we've reviewed our update processes, and we've decided to make this change because it gives us more time after release to engage with the feedback and make changes if we need to. Now, Kieran, am I right in saying that we opted for a Thursday release way back because RuneScape RS3 were updating on Tuesdays?
I think it was just to be as far away as possible from the RuneScape updates. I think RuneScape updates were Monday even back then, but it was just to have more breathing room and be basically the opposite, as far opposite as you could be. So that was all. We just did a whole discussion across the company of all the different departments that are impacted by it, and worked out that Wednesday was viable and solved problems for us. I mean, the main thing is, we release a piece of content, you guys, the players, want fixes to it. You want feedback applied to it. There's too many times where we're having to wait beyond the weekend, and we'd rather get the fixes in by the Friday, so that it's all there ready for the weekend when obviously everyone's playing and we're not able to be working on it. So
Sweet. Another scheduling change we announced was that beginning, what date would it be? Beginning the 27th of August, live streams will once again take place on Thursdays instead of Wednesdays. This is to ensure that on days where there are larger game updates, we can focus our attention solely on the game update, engaging with the feedback, communicating any changes that need to be communicated, that kind of thing. Now, next week, there will be no game update at all, but there will be the regular live stream on a Wednesday. There'll be no game update because we've got a thing happening, a little event internally in Jagex called Level Up, which is taking place on the end of the week, where the entirety of the Jagex studio, all the JMods, are invited to, I guess, develop the skills, level up the skills, hence why it's called Level Up. There's lots of different panelists coming in, lots of sessions, game jams and stuff happening, where we get total freedom and to kind of run right with our creativity or learn new skills. I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be nice to have the break away from this constant working from home life of so many Zoom calls, so many Slack meetings happening, and we can just focus on learning and developing. Somebody points out it's quite similar to a hackathon. So there are some hackathon sessions running, which is just about creative stuff. But then there's also kind of like formal learning, lectures and seminars happening as well. Right, okay, that about wraps up the scheduling changes. Now let's get into the rest of the questions. SMTV asks, could it be possible to acquire multiple enchanted symbols after completing Major Arena 2? Right now you can only have one, and you cannot drop trick additional symbols. They're the best option for people doing suicide runs to the Buildy Chaos Altar, but if you get PK'd, it turns into 2 coins and you have to go all the way back to Collodion and get a new one.
I'd be very curious why this was disallowed originally. Like, it might have been an oversight, but maybe there was a proper reason for it. Like, someone said 2 coins, but like maybe it's got like an alch value or something, but even then you'd be able to abuse it currently anyway. So I can't imagine there's a good reason for not enabling you to get more. Like, we had a nice change with locator orbs recently as well, where you can just get an entire inventory of them really, really quickly. So it would be quite nice to be able to get multiple of these. It is really nice for Buildy Chaos Altar prior training. I'd like it.
Okay, cool. Next question is from Santline. They ask, is it possible to give some of the more generic pets names which are proper names to make them a bit more interesting? For example, Pet Ziliana would become Liliana, and so on.
Why not?
I think we just need enough puns and then we can do it.
Yeah, I'll be all for it.
Don't have anything against it.
It makes sense to have consistency, so yeah.
Same as the Vetian pet should be Petion, but
Cute.
depends how you choose to pronounce it. That's why we need a Gmod pronounce video.
I really want to do that, you know. I think after this I want to get the ball rolling for another pronounce video. The time is right.
Yeah.
Okay, next question then. Colin Sawyer asks, would you like to see the Great All Project return to old school RuneScape? What are your thoughts, guys? Also Chad as well. I know it's going to be a controversial one, so get spamming.
Great Old Project itself, I don't think was controversial. It was just the mini game. Depends what you do with the rewards and all the other tie-ins to it. But broadly, I think it was cool. I know a lot of players did enjoy playing it. I think what wasn't ideal was that it took place in the real altars and it got in the way of people actually doing real rune crafting and such sometimes. You could instance it, that'd be absolutely fine. But yeah, I'm not super like, oh yes, we need Great Orb Project, that was the best minigame ever. I think it was cool. I'd be happy to see it, but I'm not gonna run naked through the streets for it, you know?
Oh.
I should use better phrases.
Maybe I'm misremembering. I feel like by the time when I was playing RuneScape 2 as it was then, by the time I got to the minigame, I don't think people were playing it. They were just drawing and earning points to grind. Which, again, if we were to add these type of minigames, we need to look at the mechanics of the game too. I don't want to add another minigame where people force a result from it.
Yeah, 100%. I think absolutely. You want minigames that people are just playing for fun. The incentives have to line up with the players doing their best to win. Right? That's how it's got to be. Simple as that. I do think we need a runecrafting update of some kind that helps people make more money through runecrafting directly. We've talked about it a few times, like getting more blood runes and such.
I think that's part of the wider discussion, which we, I want to put us on blast a bit here. We keep saying we want to have it, but we never get around to it, which is rebalancing the GP coming from killing stuff versus doing skilling. And that makes sense to have that on part of it as well.
100%.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. I think that's a separate topic. Maybe we'll get a bit further into that in the next few streams or so. Level 99 Cookie asks, can the Slayer helm be kept on death instead of going to the gravesite? This avoids being hit by the effects the helm protects us from, i.e. aberrant spectres and so on.
I mean, if you are dying a lot, like aberrant spectres, like you can just buy a lot of nose pegs, right? Like you have the same issue in the Brimstone dungeon in Mount Crowdon. Like you need to buy a bunch of the boots if you want to like go back and pick up your stuff, assuming you don't have the diary. So even if we did fix this or change this, like you wouldn't fix that issue. So like, and it feels kind of an impossible thing to avoid. You're always going to have to walk past something that is dangerous at some point, right? It's just part of the game.
It feels like it's kind of leaning towards escape as well. I mean, if you die near the spectres, tough. Yeah, go buy a nose pick.
Cheap.
I like it. Get good. Don't die. Is the TLDR of those answers. Thanks a lot, guys. Footline asks, can you please remove the pole booth in the farming guild? It gets in the way of the bank chest when the camera's pointed north.
I've suffered from this a few times, just always clicking on the pole booth backs, and I'm sure there's probably a place that it could be moved to, but it is quite tight in there. There's a lot of scenery and things you can interact with, so maybe not. Pole booths are a bit redundant these days as well. I'm not sure if everyone knows about it, but you don't need to be near a pole booth to vote in a poll anymore. You can literally do it almost anywhere. You just open up the poll menu in your settings interface. So it could be removed without any downside, really. If people want to get rid of it, then sure.
There is one at basically every bank, so there's plenty of options. But yeah, I'm sure we'd still have a look to see if there's a spot in the farming guild where it could easily go. So
I just want to point out the contradiction between saying get good and don't die, and not saying just don't point your camera north. But never mind, I'll ignore that because it affects us. So we'll consider the suggestion.
Sure.
Okay. Next thing I want to discuss is a suggestion from a player called Progenitor. Now this is in response to a problem which Mod Kieran asked players to solve, which is run energy with new players. Now, lots of people have been asking us to add musicians to rest spots and that kind of things, and we've already said, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to follow that path. Things like stamina potions exist. Mod Spear, could you throw up this suggestion for us, please? Mod Kieran, do you kind of talk us through, since you were challenging players to solve run energy because it's a problem, do you want to explain why it's a problem? And what
so
kind of
it's a
resolution?
problem because walking is abhorrently slow, and free-to-play players lack the ability to train agility, which makes it better. They do have access to energy potions, which is, certainly a little later into the game. It's a viable solution when you can get a lot of them. But energy potions aren't great. They're no stamina potions either. And it's frustrating. You have to walk a lot at the start of the game, because that's when you don't have the teleports that you do have later. So players find this frustrating. We've seen that in the player research we've done of new players and such. So we want to find a solution that helps people run more, but fits the game, ultimately, to remove that frustration as best as we can. So finding a nice solution that bridges that gap, that's what we want to try and do. And I think this suggestion is actually goes a long way to doing that.
Cool. Mod Speed, do you want to walk us through some more of the images? I think you cropped some more down. Okay, so the notion of this is being able to rest at pubs. How it works, you stand in a pub and then you rapidly recover run energy. Not quite how I experience pubs in real life, but this is a game, so this is what we'll do. Now you'll notice that the run energy icon changes colour, and this is where it works. This is the player's pitch. You know what, it's easily accessible for all players. It fits seamlessly with the game world. You know what, I agree here. I really prefer that the pubs exist in the game already, whereas magicians would be added and they kind of stand out a little bit. So I prefer this. There's a talk about game integrity. Kira mentioned that as well. We want to balance it so run energy isn't abundant, but also easier to manage. And again, it's intuitive. The player mentioned that you can teach it very easily in Tutorial Island, and I believe Mod Spear, the player, gives us that. Here you go, here's a mock-up. Mod Tide, I hope you're watching. I think you were working on some Tutorial Island stuff a little while ago. He just proposes that the quest guide offers the player a pint and talks about restoring run energy in a pub. Okay, thanks Mod Spear. Is there another one to this? And I think this is the last image we've got. So here is just the player pointing out where these are where the pubs exist. They're not really in any game-breaking locations. You think back to musicians and bards in RuneScape 3 where you're sitting rest. They're purposely put in certain places where you're going to be running. So it's clearly intended for you to be able to just restore your run energy without any regard for maybe creating like a social hub, a social space, which is what this player has put together. Now you can find this on Reddit. I think it's a good suggestion. We wanted to call it out purely because of that reason. I think it's worth a discussion. I've seen lots of players saying yay, lots of players saying nay. But one to consider, and we just wanted to present it a bit. Thank you very much, Modcast.
Yeah, I don't think this really breaks anything, right? It's you get to a town, then I can go from 0 to 100 a lot faster than I could just standing still. Or even drinking, like, how many energy doses? 4 or 5 doses? It's quite a nice solution, because it shouldn't change those core metas of any kind. Because it's not on the way to something, right? It's only when you get to your destination of another city. I love the social aspects. I like the idea of there being a few free-to-play players in the pub, quickly stopping, maybe having a quick chat, then moving on. I like that stuff, personally. And I don't really see how this would ever have a real negative impact on anything integrity-wise. It's really early game. Agility still has a strong purpose, because this is still about running elsewhere, right? In between locations, it's not going to really help you there. It's just going to get you going quicker once you do get there. So, yeah. It's also not a perfect solution, right? There's still aspects where people are still going to be frustrated, and arguably we could still do more. I'm keen on the idea of agility itself being a free-to-play skill with one agility course that you can access at the start of the game. That kind of stuff. But yeah.
Cool. I've seen lots of people in the chat requesting a straw poll. Modtide, if you're still with us, thank you for staying with us, especially since we delayed you by about 15 minutes. Me and Kieran running late. Do you fancy backing up a straw poll for us, just asking whether or not players are interested in this kind of resolution? Yes or no? Maybe a third option, which is fix run energy, but in a different way. So just so we know if they do or don't like the pub idea. And in the meantime, we'll move on with some other questions. So Fluorescent X asks, could the Gauntlet cape be given multiple cosmetic tiers after a certain amount of corrupted Gauntlet completions, similar to capes from Theatre of Blood and Challenge Mode Chambers of Xeric?
So this question was asked a couple of months ago when I was on stream, and I kind of like the idea of it, assuming an artist could come up with something cool. I don't see why not. Although I did talk to some of the original developers of the Gauntlet, and the reason it wasn't done originally is just because in their eyes they see it as it's like a raids only thing, right? Where like TOB and Chambers, they're raids, they're much more big, impactful pieces of content, and they deserve like the prestige of having multiple tiered capes. And maybe Gauntlet isn't really up for that, and I can completely agree with that. But if players really want this, I don't see much harm in enabling it either.
Okay, I mean, it's a good point to do with the exclusivity of raids, but there are other cosmetics in game which change appearance depending on how much of something you've done. So I think there is room to have this discussion, and perhaps it could apply to other things as well. Worth considering, so I'll put it. I'll make a note of this one, and perhaps we'll discuss it in the future. Okay, next question. Atlas TNS asks, can we get the last Smith option on anvils, similar to the last searched option in the Grand Exchange?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Although you could argue, if we're going to do that, should we do a last cooked? Should we do a last spun on the spinning wheels? So it might feel weird to just put it on anvils. I think if we're going to do it, we should do the whole lot. That's just my opinion.
I agree. Presumably the person's sniffing quite a lot, so they've come to this conclusion. Not a bad shout. Again, one to discuss, maybe for poll 73 when we get to it later in the year. Next question. Voltaire asks, there was talk about making Agility free to play, which Kieran touched upon. Is there a reason we haven't heard more about this?
About making Agility free to play?
Yeah, so we were talking about it quite a lot. Around the time we introduced the first adventure path, or at least kind of started talking about that type of thing. And we haven't really discussed it since.
And it's just a case of we've been dedicated to other projects, really. And new player experience has taken a little bit more of a backseat for the last few months. But it's a consideration we still want to have. And there's analysis that needs to be done here, because naturally making anything that's members exclusive free to play might have ramifications for how many people are members. And so it's just business sense has to still be taken into account there. That's all. I don't think it will be a worry, though, personally. I don't think that'll be a concern. It's just, we got to make sure and sanity check this kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think people necessarily train agility because they love agility, but I know there's some exceptions out there. Most people use it for maxing because that's part of what you need to do, or certain shortcuts and so on. Bear in mind that making agility free to play wouldn't necessarily make all the content you use agility for free to play as well. So yeah, we'll do our due diligence when it comes to considering that we run a business and we want members. Can't be giving the whole game away. As a note, though, and I don't want to plug this, but Final Fantasy XIV have completely changed their early game experience. They've kind of given lots of their early expansions. I definitely think it's something we should look at when it comes to talking about these types of skills and whatnot.
Yeah, and also making agility free to play doesn't solve it directly, because many new players will become members, which naturally is much less of a problem if you do. But actually, the fact the first agility course is across the other side of the map also doesn't make any sense, right? You think of most games, generally they start lower level area, and the further you go from home, the harder it gets. Old School isn't set up like that. The map's a lot more all over the place. The fact that level 1 agility is all the way over in the known stronghold, it doesn't work very well. People don't necessarily jump to that unless you know what you're doing and you know it's there. And even if you do, it's a hell of a trek if you don't know how to go and just get the right level of jewelry and find the right teleports and such. So actually, I do think there is space for some sort of free-to-play area agility course that's level 1, even if it's not free-to-play. So,
okay, so I'd expect us to revisit this in the future. All right, I want to take some questions from the chat before we wrap up. We're coming to the end of the stream now, and that's including the fact that we were late. So let's go into some questions from the chat. What have we got? Cash Gaming asks, tells us, the grotesque changes with holders being able to attack during transitions. Now we cannot attack during the second transition. Was this intentional?
I think it's mainly your attacks go through during transitions. That's like the big difference. Previously, the Grotesque Guardians would cap your max hit if the hit would hit over a certain threshold to a transition, and any projectiles or additional attacks such as Crystal Halberd or Scythe would be completely nullified. Now they're not nullified at all. So your damage does go through during the transitions, but like whilst they're walking to an individual spot, you can't actually attack them. So it might have been bad wording, but there was definitely different functionality implemented to ease the transition, maybe downtime.
Okay, that's good to me. Lunch guy asked,
sorry, Sreen, just one sec. I had a sick suggestion I just saw on Twitter about pubs. If you're going to do that and allow people to restore energy at pubs, add things like Rune Link and Rune Squares to be playable in pubs. Make them proper social hubs rather than having it all the way in, Birth Up Games Room. That is a little neat bow on top. Perfect piece of content there. Like it. Love it.
Oh my god.
So did the chat. Okay, we'll do that then. Maybe we'll get some Rune Link esports happening at the same time as well, huh? All right, I've got some questions more. We'll power through a few. We'll overrun by the hour because we were late, so we'll make up to the players. I am quite keen on wrapping up because I am so hot and sweaty. Anyway, Lunch Guy asks, how much more efficient will Mahogany Homes be in terms of XP per plank? I've got about half the number of teak logs needed for 99 banks, and I don't want to bother banking more if I don't have to. So do we have any more indication of plank XP or even XP rates? And I know Mod Arcane was asking, we're getting a conversation rolling about polling with XP rates in future, that kind of thing as well. And I owed you a response. I didn't give you one. I was busy. Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, I don't really have any numbers to give you right now. It's still in development. It still kind of needs to... the content itself kind of needs to be fully developed in terms of the gameplay itself, and then you can balance the numbers afterwards and basically get it to a point that we're happy with. But in terms of what I'm kind of aiming for is I don't really want it to be any higher than like 200k, or maybe a bit higher than that, like maximum efficiency, maximum tier, like if you're really sweating. So for most people, it'll be less than that. In terms of like XP per plank, again, that's just going to vary quite a lot. I can't really give you any numbers, unfortunately.
Okay. Now, Modside, I've seen you reorder this question a few times, so I'm assuming you want me to ask it. Creepy's Apter asks, could we get a free-to-play cow or rat boss? And this is a note from Modside in which it says, I have a rat boss made in one of my streams. It needs looking at and polishing though. So, yeah, maybe in future, maybe Motai can get polishing the rat, and then we can introduce it to you. Okay, A. LeBlanc asks, can we get any buff to the Eldritch Nightmare staff? It's barely better than an Ancient Mace, and the price reflects this. Last time when it was polled in March, it nearly passed. Also, many people who voted back then were confused between the Eldritch and the Volatile. Is that a combination of questions there? I'm not quite sure I follow.
I think they just asked for a buff for the Eldritch Orc, right?
Yeah.
I think we did try and pull a buff a while ago and it failed. We tried to reduce the cost of the special attack. It failed. It does have its use. I think Armadillo's probably its best use right now, just for longer trips. But it is very niche. But quite a lot of the items from Nightmare are quite niche.
Fox Terror is pointing out that apparently it still retains like a value of 150 mil or so. So it's still sought after item, just not as expensive as the other ones, which is fine. Okay, we'll move on then. We won't consider that. We'll take a few more before we wrap up. I'm Fliz asked a question about the new fishing boss. Now, I don't know how much we want to start giving away, so Kieran, feel free to shut the question down. Is the new fishing boss like Todd, where the XP is the main attraction, or like Zalcano, where the loot is the main attraction?
It'll be about XP, but not towards top end. So it's aimed at the middle range of fishing. Sort of like going from like level 30-ish to level 70-ish. Keeping Barb as the top end, but adding diversity as a way to get through the middle levels, where you don't have a ton of options. Well, not a ton of viable options. You have a ton of different similar options, whether it's clicking on a lobster spot, clicking on a swordfish spot, or clicking on a trout and salmon spot. It's essentially the same thing with a different tool in your inventory. So this offers something different, and the ability to tie in some new cool rewards into it.
Sounds good.
It'll still be
like
decent to beyond 70, right? It's just not going to be as good as Barb fishing, which is the hardcore, much more hardcore fishing training method. Even in the even when you do AFK Barb fishing, not the full tick malarkey that some people do.
I've seen a name suggestion if you're still looking for those. Wintertodt. Weird.
Trash.
We'll put it in the maybe pile. We'll move on from there. Like we said earlier, expect some news from us on the fishing box in the next couple of weeks or so. We're aiming for next week, but the design and some of the work in progress assets aren't quite ready, and we want to make sure it's right when we talk about it. Okay, I want to end by looking at the straw poll results. So earlier we asked you about the pub suggestion for restoring one energy, and we straw polled it. Thank you, Motai, for that. How many votes? We had about 800 votes. So 800 of you voted. 77% of you voted yes. 12% said you should look at solving the run energy problem, but in a different way. 9% of you said no, and then 2% skipped. So you know what? I see there's some support for that kind of suggestion, and I definitely think it's something we should note down and explore a bit further. Maybe look at the weakness of the player design and flesh it out a bit more. With that said, I'd like to start wrapping this up. Does anybody on the stream want to say any last words? I'll cover the announcements shortly.
Stay hydrated.
Top advice, stay hydrated. I ran out of water about 15 minutes in because I swear it evaporated as soon as I brought it into this room. It is boiling in here.
Yeah, stay hydrated. Go to the toilet rather than using bottles while you play RuneScape. Stay safe from the sun. Wear sun cream if you do venture outside. It's a risky life out there. And thanks for watching.
Right, okay, let's run through some announcements and then we'll end. The poll for Mahogany Homes, the construction update, is now live. It launched on Monday and it closes next Monday. So have your say before the poll ends. Head to the poll booth in game or use the account management tab to vote. Earlier today, we released a blog for A Porcine of Interest, which is a new novice level quest aimed at new members and low level members, kind of onboard them to the Slayer skill. It's a new player change. And lastly, if you have any questions you'd like to ask next week, then !mark questions. We take them to a form where you can submit the questions, we'll sort through them, and then we'll add them to the doc. Okay, with that in mind, yeah, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Remember, there's no game update next week, but we'll be back the week after. And then on that week, game updates will happen on Wednesdays, and live streams will happen on Thursdays. So thank you very much. See you next week. Stay safe.